Welcome everyone. This video will be a tutorial on how to create a chip. For those of you who don't know, CHIPS stands for CHIA Improvement Proposals. And these are based on BIPs, or Bitcoin Improvement Proposals. And what CHIPS give you is a way for anyone, including you, to propose any sort of changes to CHIA. Now, not everything could be a chip, but chips do include a very wide variety of things, such as changes to the core consensus, or how certain aspects of wallets are standardized across the ecosystem, and it could even include new CHIA Lisp puzzles. We've already created one AMA, which describes exactly what chips are and how they are used, so I won't go into great detail about that here, but I do want to give you one brief example of why chips are so important. A while back, we created the NFT1 standard, which is itself a chip, highlighted here. And one part of the NFT1 standard is that it has built-in creator royalties. This allows the creator of an NFT to be paid a royalty each time the NFT is sold. This is a great feature of NFTs because any marketplaces that want to display the NFTs have no ability to change the royalty amount or to where the royalty goes. However, the NFT1 standard only provides one single address to where a royalty can be paid. Now, the great thing about this is it uses CHIA Lisp, so this address could correspond to any CHIA Lisp puzzle. If we did not have chips, the creator of one wallet might devise a CHIA Lisp puzzle to split royalties and only use that in their wallet. And then the creator of a different wallet might devise a different puzzle to get the same job done of splitting royalties and put that in their wallet. This is fine until you realize that these wallets are no longer compatible. So when someone creates an NFT, they'll have to choose which splitting puzzle to use, and then their NFT might not be visible at all in the other wallet, or at least the royalty splitting part of it wouldn't work properly. And while a healthy competition is a good thing between wallet developers, certain things probably ought to be standardized across the CHIA ecosystem, and royalty splitting is one of those. So a user called Acevale from our community created this chip here, number 8, to split royalties. And let's open that now. So you can see here the chip is a splitter puzzle, and it contains a bunch of information about Acevale's motivation behind creating the chip and how it works, and it shows you exactly how to implement it. Here's the puzzle itself. And now that we have this chip, anyone in the community who wants to create a wallet or a marketplace or a minting tool for NFTs can use this chip when they split royalties. And so now the same puzzle will be used everywhere. And I should note that the initial chip got a bit of pushback from the community. Not everyone agreed with every single part of it, and that was fine. There was a bunch of discussion. Acevale made some updates. And now that everyone is happy with how it works, we can all come together and use it. So this is an example of a chip that has already gone through the process of being vetted within the community and is now finalized. Hopefully this gives you a better idea of how chips can be used. And if you still have questions, I'm going to point you to another place where we have all kinds of great information about chips and how they work, and that is Chip 1, which is linked here. It's also linked in this chip list, which I'll talk about momentarily. But for now, I'm going to open Chip 1, and this is what's called a living chip, and it's a chip that describes chips, basically. It has all kinds of info here, and I suggest if you have any questions at all, and even if you don't, if you're just getting started with chips, I suggest that you read this whole thing thoroughly because it has a lengthy description of what can and cannot be a chip. Next, let's talk about where chips are stored and how you can view them. So just a moment ago, I mentioned that list of chips, so I'll go back to show you that. This is on a website that is called GitHub, and just in case you don't know, GitHub is a place for open source projects. Now, Chia Network has their own GitHub page that I'm highlighting here, and they have a whole bunch of repositories for source code, and one of those is chips. So GitHub is the place where you can go to view and create your own chips We don't have our own dedicated website just for chips because we wanted to keep things as simple as possible. But anyone, even if you don't have a GitHub account, you can go to this website, and on the front page, we have a little bit about meetings for chips, and below that, we have our chips list. This is the current status of all chips, and it is always kept up to date. So you can see we have a few that are in draft. We have one that is nearly done as I'm recording this, and a whole bunch that are final. And there's some other categories too, and I encourage you to look through one or two of these before you decide to open your own chip. So let's say you have an idea that you are thinking about making into a chip. The first thing you should do is go onto our Discord and vet your idea with the community. And there's a few good reasons to do this. For starters, maybe someone else is already working on something similar to what you want to do, and you guys could work together. Another reason is maybe somebody shuts your idea down constructively, saying why exactly this will not be a good idea for a chip. And also, maybe somebody builds your idea up. They give you some constructive feedback, and you can make your idea even stronger when you create your chip. And finally, you want to make sure that you have a good pulse of the community and make sure that you have a fair amount of agreement on what this chip should be and should look like, the general outline of it, before you begin writing anything at all. That will save you a lot of time in the long run. Once you're pretty sure your idea will work as a chip, you can come back here to GitHub, and if you don't already have an account, you'll need to create one. Now, I'm not going to show you how to create an account here, it's pretty straightforward, but once you have your account, you'll need to make a copy of Chia Network's repository. And what I mean by that is, right now I'm looking at the chips repository in Chia Network, and I, as a user, am not allowed to edit this repository directly. So I can make a copy of it, which is called a fork, and I'll click this button here to create the fork, and then I can edit my local copy. This will show my user ID, and I can keep the name the same and add a description if I want, but not required. And I only need the main branch, so I'll just keep that checked, and I'll click Create Fork and give this a few seconds. And once it comes up, then I will have my own local copy of chips, and I can make any edits to it that I want without revealing that or showing it to anyone else. And once I'm ready, then I can actually create the chip and show it off to Chia Network. And I should also note that if you are already really familiar with GitHub, you're probably used to making changes and edits on a command line, but for this tutorial, I'm just going to stick with a browser window, and I'm doing that to keep things as beginner-friendly as possible. While most chips probably require quite a bit of source code to be written, not all of them do. Some chips don't require any source code at all, so I don't want to exclude anyone who has never used GitHub before. The next step will be to fill out the chip itself, and I'm going to walk you through how to do that. In the main part of the chips repository, we have a file here called chip-template.md. I'm going to open that in a new tab and take a look at it. This will guide you through how exactly to fill out your chip. And you'll notice here that it says copy the template file to the chips folder and rename it. So now I'm going to make a copy of this file by clicking copy raw file. Go back to the main repository, and I need to make a copy of it into this folder, chips. The chips folder contains currently every chip that has been finalized, and I'm going to open my new chip here. If it also gets finalized, then it will end up here with a number on it. So I'm going to click Add File, Create New File. Now I can paste the copy that I just made. So now I have an exact copy of that template, and it's said to rename it, and here's how to rename it. So I will copy this and paste it here. I'll fill in my name. It's important to get this exactly right because we need to organize all of the chips as they come in. And let's just say my proposal is to make a new demo Chia list puzzle. Something like that. And now I'm going to go into the file itself and make changes. So chip number, you'll notice it says creator must leave this blank. This is because only the editor will assign the chip a number. The title can be a maximum of 44 characters. I'll just say Chia Lisp demo puzzle. And then I can write a short description. Description of puzzle goes here. And then I need to add my name. Now, you are allowed to be pseudonymous if you want. However, we do need some kind of contact info so we can get in touch with you. And I'll just say, put my GitHub here, just to pretend. The next few are ones that the creator leaves blank, so we don't even have to worry about these. Now, the category is really important, and puzzles, as Chip 1 explains, are informational. So I'll just use this. And then the subcategory is Chia Lisp puzzle. Then I will put in today's date, which is 2024-02-20. Make sure you use this format, please, because different countries have different ways of writing the date. This chip won't require any other chips. It's not going to replace another chip and not superseded by another chip. So that part is pretty simple. This next part just describes what to do, and it has a link to chip 1, so I can actually delete this now that I've renamed it. Now I need to fill in the abstract for the chip. This should be a single paragraph, and anyone who reads this one paragraph should have a pretty good idea of what your chip does. I'm not going to fill that in right now. You can do that on your own. The next section then is motivation. And this section describes why you created this proposal. I have a few example questions here of things to answer, and ideally you can answer all of these. So what problem are you trying to solve? How would this benefit the overall ecosystem, etc. The more detailed you can make this, the better. And that's especially true if you're making some big changes, because you will need to get most people on board in order to get this chip through. So be as thorough and detailed as possible. And if it wasn't obvious already, these two hashes here are headers. And so you don't want to delete this, but you do want to delete all of this, which is just example stuff, and put your actual text here. And that's for every single section. And the next section is backwards compatibility. So if you are proposing any kind of changes where if somebody doesn't upgrade their system after your changes have gone in, if something's going to break on their system, then that means there's a backwards incompatibility. Now, if you have something like that in your chip, that doesn't necessarily mean it gets rejected. It's just that we need to know exactly what is going to happen. And once again, the bigger the change that you're proposing, the more detailed you need to be here. So please list anything that is backwards incompatible in your chip. Next section then is rationale, which is really about your design decisions. So what kind of alternative designs did you consider, and what design decisions did you make? Ideally, you will be able to answer all of these questions because you've already vetted this within the community. So please fill this out too. And I'll just delete this example text. Then we have a full specification. And this should list the details, not the code itself, but the details of how the code will work if you're writing source code. Now, if you're simply proposing some change to standard terminology that we use or something like that, this can be a pretty short section. You don't need to fill in too much. But for my Chia Lisp puzzle that I'm fake proposing here, I might want to put in any sort of function, descriptions, etc. Okay, and then we have test cases. Typically, well, when you open your chip, you might just be able to leave this blank. That's not a big deal, but by the time it gets through the whole process, you'll probably want to have some test cases there, especially if you're writing source code, and ideally those will be automatically run when we make new builds. So put a link to any test cases here. Then we have your reference implementation. Typically, this is just going to be a link to where the source code sits. It could also be, for example, if in this case I am making a puzzle, I could put the puzzle itself here if it's short. So put puzzle code here. Otherwise, if it's if it already has been merged into some other repository, just put a link to it here. Then you need to consider security, and everyone needs to do this because this is obviously very important that we keep Chia secure. So list any kind of security issues that you come up with. If it's a big change, then ideally you want to get a full audit done by a third-party company, as we at Chia Network have done many times before for our chips. And once again, there's a wide range of chips here, so there's a wide range of how much you will need to include here for security. Use your own judgment. If you have any additional assets, so for example, diagrams or images of some sort, then you can put them in the asset folder and you will need to include a link to that. And then the copyright, you just don't change at all. So you'll notice there's a lot of different sections here, and some of them need to be really detailed. So this probably will take a while to fill out, but I know I've said this a bunch of times, but the more details you give us, the higher your chances of success will be. And once you've finished filling out the entire template and you're satisfied with its contents, you can go ahead and commit the changes. So I will click this green commit changes button here. Now, this will not actually create the chip just yet. What this is going to do is save everything that I've done to my local copy of the repository. You'll need to leave a message, which the example here is fine. And you can put another description in if you want. So create demo Chia Lisp puzzle. Now, the important thing here is I don't want to commit this directly to the main branch. I want the chip itself to have its own branch. So I'm going to click here, create a new branch. I don't want this name for the branch. I'll just put in demo puzzle, something that describes what your chip is very briefly, and keep your name there. That's fine. Then I'll click Propose Changes. And at this point, I can open the pull request, which will actually create the chip. So I'll click the Create Pull Request button here. I could change the title if I want or add a different description, but I'll just stick with this. And the last step is to click Create Pull Request. I'm not actually going to click this button right now because what it would do is attempt to merge my changes that I just made into the Chia Network version of this repository, and that would effectively open the chip. At that point, someone from Chia will see the pull request and get back to you probably within a few days. If nobody gets back to you within a few days, you can go on Discord into the Chips channel and you can ask if anyone at Chia Network has taken a look at this pull request that you just opened. So once an editor has looked at your chip, if they determine that it is a viable idea, that it could be a chip, they will assign it with a number, assign themselves as the editor. And from there, typically the way we proceed, if we go back to the repo here, is with one of these meetings that I sort of alluded to before. What we like to do is set up a public Zoom call where you, as the creator of the chip, can present your chip to the community and show your motivation behind it, how it works, etc. And then anyone who's interested in participating can ask questions. And this just really helps to boost up the engagement of the chip. These are not an absolute requirement to do, but we typically like to do one of these within a few weeks of opening the chip. And then the final thing that I'll talk about here is the workflow for how chips move through their process. Let's go to chip 1 here and scroll down. I have this flowchart set up here. Every chip starts with an idea, and that's before you have even written a word about it. And at this point where I've been talking about is it's in draft. Typically, a chip will stay in draft for at least a month, although there's no real maximum. It could stay in draft for a year if you need that much time. And once you have everything written, some test cases, a reference implementation, everything's basically done, then the editor will move your chip into review. And this is a stage where anyone who's interested can come and leave comments and make sure that they agree with your chip. And if it seems like we have a wide amount of agreement, and let's say after a couple weeks, maybe a month, I mean, there's no real hard and fast timeline exactly for how long it has to stay in review, but for a while, if it seems like we have general consensus, then the next step is to move the chip into last call. And last call is a 2 week window where no changes can be made at all to the chip. And if anything needs to be changed, then we have to move it back to review. If it makes it through the last call window, then the final step is to move the chip to final. And at that point, it can no longer be changed. And as the creator of the chip, at any point, you can withdraw your chip. And if you do that, then you cannot reopen it. It's done once it's withdrawn. But you can always open a new chip with exactly the same wording if you need to. Okay, I hope you have found this video helpful. If you have an idea for a chip after watching this video, the next steps are going to be to read chip 1, as I said before, and then I think it's a good idea to at least just look through one of the chips that's been finalized. So for example, if we open one of them here, you can get a good idea just looking through this of the level of detail that we're looking for and exactly what goes into creating a chip. If you have any further questions, feel free to hit us up on Discord. Thanks for watching, everyone. I look forward to seeing those chips.